Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Even though the morning episodes used to be Evan's witching hour, Brad, I think something has changed fundamentally since Sullivan came around. There's been a paradigm shift. Last episode, after it posted, the comments started to flow in, and then I saw a few where it was like, is Evan asleep? Did Evan doze off? Evan's eyes are actually closed at like this timestamp, and I was like, oh my God, no. There's no way Evan fell asleep during this episode, and neither of us clocked it. And I went back and looked, and I can confirm two things. One, he was not actually asleep. And two, I do think he was speaking to us with his eyes intentionally closed, trying to get rest. This is a new father. Again, for those of you who don't know, Evan and his wife, Catherine, just brought home their son, Sullivan. And the first, 70 days he was in hospital because he came 10 weeks early.
Yep.
And so you guys are just now experiencing life with a newborn at home for the first time. And Evan's getting his ass kicked for sure.
As a household that was routinely in bed around 10 p.m., our sleep habits have changed dramatically.
Oh yeah, you guys are like the platonic ideal of when to get to bed. Mel and I aspire to be Evan and Catherine, like in bed at 10:30.
Those days are long gone.
As evidenced by the fact that you were giving us player analysis with your eyelids touching, man.
Yeah, I have to be efficient now. There's only so much energy I have.
Now as the veteran dad on this podcast, I would love to give Evan the it gets better speech. It just gets bad in different ways. I had a 3-day weekend and I was up before 5:30 twice.
Evan has a decade plus of doing this podcast covering the Detroit Red Wings. Taught you anything? Because I feel like that should be some level of preparedness for what Brad just described.
If I can lock in 6 hours of sleep in a night, I will be extremely happy.
All right, folks. Well, the good news is it's not a morning episode. You're going to get Evan alive and well. And
Sully's first Red Wing game was during this stretch of games we're about to talk about.
No, not the Islanders game.
Yes.
No.
Yes. I sent Ken a picture while the game was happening, like in the first period. I was like, no pressure, but there's a new listener.
Oh,
that's like a frat initiation right now. It's just miserable beginning to end. But then once it's over, you're in.
You hazed your newborn?
He did what I wish I could have done and fallen asleep.
I thought he just had a big blowout.
Probably that too.
Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
This episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast is presented by Greenlight Lending. Red lights are meant for lighting the lamp at the rink, not your home ownership goals. Head to gogreenlightlending.com today for creative mortgage solutions with flexible closing cost options. Licensed only in Michigan, NMLS 2676683, an equal housing opportunity lender. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we have two extremely interesting Red Wings games to talk about. I don't even know how to prime these. Everyone knows what we're talking about, the Islanders game and the Blues game. And just, I think, 4 periods of some god-awful hockey. And then some weird stuff happened in a great way. We're going to be talking about Red Wings news. We have a guest on this episode, Prashanth Iyer, from the Winged Wheel Podcast Content Universe, host of Expected by Whom, to talk early season analysis on the Red Wings. We're going to talk prospect updates, more news from the Hockeytown system, notes from across the league, and more before we get into overtime. Very quickly, Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA, Saturday, November 15th, wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings to get your tickets. Your tickets are discounted. You also get access to the pregame live recording of the Winged Wheel Podcast at Little Caesars Arena, featuring us, the host of the Winged Wheel Podcast, Ken Daniels, lead announcer of the Detroit Red Wings, Rob Ray, and other special guests. You also get a special co-branded Detroit Red Wings and Winged Wheel Podcast Centennial-themed blanket. All of that and lots more, and every ticket purchased represents a donation to the Jamie Daniels Foundation. So again, wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings. The New York Islanders game. So we recorded the morning that game happened. So that game was in the evening of Thursday, and then we recorded bright and early on Thursday morning because that was after the Sabres game. So, whenever we do those episodes, we're like, Yeah, we don't really like to go between games, but just to get the episode out there, we have to sometimes do it. Not the best. And after the Sabres game, which we discussed, we wanted that episode to be out of date. Because we talked about a terrible game. We're like, hopefully they rebound against the Islanders. 7-2. 7-2 on Long Island to the New York Islanders. I have like 3 actual show notes from that game. Keep track of everything as I'm watching the game, covering it, and recap and everything, and make a list of notes for most games. And there's 3. And the first one for the Islanders game is just bad. I've ruminated on it. I have a lot more, I think, complex thoughts on it. But even if you are the most level-headed, calm, collected, patient hockey fan and Red Wings fan, and I think a lot of times, sometimes people get mad at any one of us for downplaying or overplaying a specific facet of a Red Wings loss or whatever it might be. I don't know how you can look at that game and not think that that was one of the worst efforts we have seen from the Detroit Red Wings since they started to have any good players again.
The old joke about basically if you show up to the test and write your name, you get at least 1%. The Red Wings misspelled their name.
Yeah.
You show up to an NHL game and you give 100% effort, you'll at least have a reasonably close result, even if your execution is horrible. They were awful. They were awful in every sense of the word. I genuinely don't even want to get into detailed analysis on this because I don't want to overcomplicate this. They were bad because they lacked intensity, because they lacked effort, because they lacked focus. I don't give a crap about any of the individual things. Okay, this guy blew coverage here. This was a bad pass. Goalie should have saved that one. Don't care.
Oh, okay. Then
this will be a 7-hour podcast.
We're way different because I care. But go on.
I don't, because the fundamentals can be good and then the breakdowns happen outside of that. But if the fundamentals aren't there, everything else doesn't matter because they're going to be bad. You know what I mean? So poor focus, poor effort. You don't have that, you're doomed from the moment the puck drops.
And they were. It was an extremely, fast game where that got out of hand for the Red Wings. By the time the score was actually out of hand, you're like, this game has felt over since the first period. And Brad talked about, missed coverage and turnovers and things like that. I agree, actually. The intensity and the lack of compete, which Todd McLellan talked about after that game and after the St. Louis game, like, what's that about? Because it was missing. It was missing in the Buffalo game, missing in the Islanders game, and we'll talk about it, missing for a good portion of the Blues game, where this team has an identity that they have shown that they can play to, and McLellan talked about that. He's like, we have our game. We know we can play. We know it's a winning game, and it has served us this season, but we're not doing it consistently, and that's the next step. So yeah, 100%, that's first and foremost. That's the foundation for why, these 2.5 games were so bad for the Red Wings. I will say what was causing me to pull out what little hair I have left on my head was the nature of how they were making these mistakes. Like, yes, the lack of intensity and compete and just being off kilter and, not skating for pucks, whatever, that's the biggest part of it. But they were also turning the puck over and then just making every single mistake they could coming back, where 2 different guys have the opportunity to pick up one single trailing man and they both do it. One of them a rookie, one of them a veteran. A rookie makes a terrible mistake. A sophomore player makes a terrible mistake. A veteran makes a terrible turnover. It was top to bottom, just devastating, self-inflicted wounds over and over and over. And that game was just a complete wash. They looked absolutely lost, like shockingly lost. And I kept trying to pull myself away from the game and thinking, this is 2 straight losses on a back-to-back on the road after 5 straight wins. You're 5-1 coming into this little mini road trip. Are you that upset about it? And it's like, it's not about the losses. It's the juxtaposition in performance it doesn't matter if that's game 8 or game 58 of the season. Like, that performance, you can't play like that as a team. Your lows, you're going to have lows throughout the NHL season. Your lows cannot be that low if you're to be a team of any success.
I don't know how to feel about a pretty big thing with the Red Wings right now, because obviously, the opening night against Montreal was bad. And it was bad enough to the point where McLellan decided to call them out right after the game. And they responded, ripped off a 5-game heater. Then they go 2.5 games of just tragic hockey. McLellan calls a timeout and just tears a strip off of them, and they respond. I don't know if I should be so encouraged that they respond when the coach challenges them, or unbelievably discouraged that he's had to do that twice 9 games into the season. Like, and it's the same issue. Like, I don't mean to oversimplify this, but I coach a U7 hockey team, and the 3 words I preach to them over and over again to the point that they get sick of me are attitude, effort, and focus. If you have those 3 things dialed in, I don't care what else you do. We can fix mistakes. I can teach you X, Y, and Z. But if you don't have those 3 things, it doesn't matter what I do. We're in trouble. It feels like the professional athlete Detroit Red Wings lose sight of those 3 things pretty friggin' routinely. And it's not a problem to just this season.
Well, I think you should be a little encouraged that they are responding, because that's pretty new. That's only been the last.
That is a nice development.
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of the benefit of having Todd McLellan, a veteran coach, coaching this team. Like, the Red Wings are trotting out a rookie head coach again. I don't think the response or the message would be delivered in such a fashion. So, yeah, I agree. It's great that they're responding to the messages, but it's another thing to be like, why does this have to keep being said?
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the growing pains of a team that's trotting out a bunch of rookies who are some of their best players, and a team that's had some veteran turnover. They're definitely still trying to find their identity, but you'd still need the foundational effort there every game.
Some other takeaways from the game: Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, in the most heartbreaking fashion, gets himself his first career NHL point, a secondary assist on Johansson Berggren's goal. Credit to Berggren and Compher, who connected to get Detroit's second goal of the game. Larkin actually scored on the power play from Finnie and DeBrincat in the 3rd period. That was to make it 5-1. Chris Paul with a deep
I was literally going to make that exact joke.
Yeah. And that actually extended Larkin's point streak to 8 games. But yeah, that was all in terms of, I'm not even going to call them silver linings. Those are just the only other notes where there wasn't a completely devastating thing for the Red Wings of that game. 2 other quick things I want to talk about. First, Elmer Soderblom, you can tell, is working on being a more physical player, and you can tell that it is counter to the way he likes to play the game. And we've talked about this. Like, that's just not him, but that's kind of, he has to take on a little bit more of that role. He doesn't have to be Tom Wilson. He doesn't have to be, Zdeno Chara or just someone absolutely blowing guys up. He's not Matt Rempe. But if you have that big of a body and you're not, putting up a ton of points, you got to use your frame a little bit. And that moment early in the game where he had Schaefer kind of dead to rights behind the net, and it looked like he kind of half committed, half not on a hit. At first I was like, oh, you got to go full send on that. But then I was like, oh, you know what? Like, if you're not used to throwing those massive hits behind the net, I can understand how you're like, is this going to be a high hit? Is this going to be, am I going to get a major penalty because of this? Like, what's going to happen? You can see this just not his game and not his element, but I do give him credit, even though I would have loved to have seen him blow Schaefer up in that moment. I do give him some credit for starting to think about those things. I want to see him go further down that track.
Can we have that same conversation with Michael Rasmussen then?
Well, no, because he didn't play the next game.
Hey, progress.
Yeah, he not the only guy, but one of many guys, and I would say probably the standout who had a shocker against the Islanders. Just the rookies, like Johansson had, I think, a pretty bad game with some pretty terrible mistakes, but you're like, you look at the rookies, look at the young guys. MBN is definitely struggling out there for sure, but the Rasmussens, you can't have games like that at this point. The only other thing before we jump to the St. Louis game, because I'm tired of talking a game that's went so badly for the Red Wings. Casey Cizikas off the draw looked like he jumped 2-hand wind up cross check over Rasmussen's back. It looked like it was just above the pants. I don't know how much protection Rasmussen had down there based on how far down his pads go. Broke his stick over Rasmussen's back. The game was already a blowout at that point, and they called a 2-minute minor. Hello? Honestly, I'm the real question. Am I biased? Am I being biased? Are these Red Wings colored glasses? I felt like that's the easiest major a ref could ever call.
No, I agree. Where the game was at, the way things have been going, you're right. Bad call. You have no idea how little I care about what the call is there.
It wasn't going to change the game.
Every piece of me, a new boomer part of my brain unlocks. Again, I hate to relate everything back to the same team, but they are the golden standard. If Casey Cizikas does that to Anton Lundell in Florida, he's leaving that arena in a body bag. And yet, here we are again.
You see how the Islanders responded on a pretty whatever hit on Schaefer at the end of the game?
Yep. I will never get off this hill.
Just a terrible, terrible night. Red Wings then had St. Louis at home on Saturday. Some things before that game, Patrick Kane was evaluated before the game, skated lightly, not really taking full team practices or anything, upper body injury, just, skating to stay skating, but was ruled out of the game, hasn't actually traveled with the team to St. Louis for this beginning of the upcoming road trip. They hope to have him on the later end of the road trip. So Kane is still out. They take out Soderblom. He's the, one regular scratch for this one. They sit Michael Rasmussen, which I said after the Islanders game, I'm like, Rasmussen has to sit at this point. It can't just be Berggren and Soderblom and, whoever else. Rasmussen legitimately deserves to sit. He's standing out. So they sit Michael Rasmussen, and they actually bring in Travis Hamonic as a seventh defenseman because Ben Sherratt took a puck off the hand in the Islanders game and was playing banged up. So they run 11-7, and oh boy, that St. Louis game.
That was real close to being a nuclear episode.
I was horrified. I was like, there's no way we're recording the same episode twice here.
No, there would be a lot more yelling on this one. A lot more.
The Red Wings scored their first goal in the second, 7:52 into the second. So halfway through that game, I was convinced that Sunday was just going to be scorched earth.
Come over early, guys. It's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a 7-hour recording.
I said 10 games after 9 games. Screw it. Here's my whiteboard of Red Wings that need to be banished to Grand Rapids and or outer space.
I honestly, I was like, is this going to be another 7 spot against the Red Wings? 2 straight games and this one at home. They were being booed off the ice after the first period.
Good. They didn't get booed loud enough for how bad that first period was.
There should have been more.
That effort was unacceptable against Buffalo. It was even more unacceptable against the Islanders. And then you come off that game in the Islanders and you have that first period. That was the most unacceptable period of hockey they have played this season. I try to not yell around children. My kids were home, obviously, as this game was going on. The self-control to not teach them new words in the middle of that period. Oh my God. It was I was having that you're not just angry, there's a visceral reaction going on in your brain going, I need to break something.
Yeah.
I was fighting that urge. The inner caveman was ready to come out.
And it was, missed defensive zone coverage. It felt like they were just not committing to the intensity of the game, not they weren't competing. And when Todd McLellan called that timeout after, what was it, the 4-0 goal?
Yes.
And everyone has been asking the Red Wings, what did Todd McLellan say to you? And they all just go, we're gonna keep that one in the room.
How many digits would be involved in the fine if a player just said verbatim what he said?
It would offset the increase in the salary cap in the upcoming seasons. But whatever Todd said, and he summarized it after the game, it was all about, the things that Brad talked about, compete and attitude and effort. It's showing up as a team and playing our game. That time it worked. And boy, did the Red Wings turn things around fast. First, again, a lot of credit, despite a lot of the criticism that has been levied his way, or to both of these guys, to Berggren and Compher. They were 2 of the 3 goals in the second period for the Red Wings.
Nice pass by Kopp on that Berggren goal, so it was good to see he still got that in there.
Yeah, Kopp, great pass to Berggren. Berggren bangs it in the power play after the first unit was doing nothing on that power play, if I remember correctly.
There were points that power play unit looked fundamentally broken, like missing 10-foot unobstructed passes. I don't think it was a power play, but that one backhand pass Seider tried that led directly to a St. Louis breakaway. Like they just fundamentally something was wrong. Like they could not complete a pass. They could not find a guy in coverage. They could not find a lane to shoot. Like everything was bad.
Axel Sandin-Pellikka picks up his first career NHL assist. He made the bank pass to Kopp on the wall, who then passed it out front, and it got to Berggren. So that was 4-1, and it was like, yeah, signs of life. Not optimistic, but that was a pulse for the Red Wings. Emmett Finnie is officially registered now as an unassisted goal. It was originally a Dylan Larkin assist, but they took it away. A puck made it out front. Blues player got a stick on it. Was it actually controlled to the point where I would take the assist off the board? Biased, I wanted Larkin's 9-game point streak to count. Sure. I don't know that I would have taken that assist off the board, but Finnie continues to roll on. Second in NHL rookies scoring with 8 points, only behind Demidov, who has 9. But that, again, I still think that should have been an assist for Larkin, but still, that made it 4-2, and that was huge because then it's just a 2-goal game in the second period. And I'd love to sit and dwell on that one, but what was it? 27 seconds later, JT Compher scores from Hamonic and Kopp, and then you go into the second intermission down just a goal.
You get a goal, JT Compher, from Travis Hamonic and Andrew Kopp. That was the moment I was certain they were winning that game.
Oh, absolutely.
Ready to throw my TV through the window 25 minutes before then to we're winning this game.
And when they were like, you know what? When they were scoring, it was funny. Like we kept saying, what's happening? Like what is fundamentally different? I think a lot of it was just like it became one of those chaos games where everything was going in.
It was intensity. Like sometimes you don't need to overthink things. They gave a shit. I would not be surprised, genuinely, if part of McLellan's rant was get your crap together or multiple of you are going to Grand Rapids tomorrow. And so guys were playing like their job was on the line because they sure as hell looked like they were playing like their job was on the line. They started winning races. They started winning battles. Like little things like that make a huge difference. I remember Max was talking to us a bit about a coaching conference he was at where one of the, I forget who it was, but one of the more well-known coaches in the hockey world was basically saying, hockey is just a series of races and battles. Like every 6 seconds, you're in a race or you're in a battle. Win those, you're probably going to win the game. Really, fundamentally, I think that's the only thing that changed for the Red Wings after the speech. But what a difference it made. Like it's, you know, sometimes we can sit here and like I mentioned it with the Islanders game where you can break down, we blew coverage here. That's why this happened. This was a bad pass. Should have made this read instead of that read. Led to a problem, or they missed that, or whatever. Most of the time, though, just try a little harder. Like, again, I know it sounds overly simplistic, but really, that's looked, to my eye, that looked like that was all that changed. Was just, okay, they're playing with a little bit of fear in their game now. They're playing with some intensity. They're playing like their job tomorrow is not guaranteed. And night and day. They were still missing passes. They were, forget about DeBrincat's voodoo curse. There were a lot of guys who couldn't hit the net on point blank chances. Like they were not playing a clean game. They were not playing a refined game. They were not playing a highly skilled game. But they were winning races and they were winning battles.
There's two guys who made big comebacks from different positions in this game that I think helped seal it. And we're going to get into the rest of the game coverage. But just to interject here, first is Simon Edvinsson, where the previous 2 games might have been the 2 worst games I've seen him play.
Well, he said that.
Yeah, like that was terrible hockey, undisciplined hockey, like just constantly putting himself and his team in a bad position. It was like, talk about shockers of a game. His play was awful. And then he ends up with 2 goals in this game. And Alex DeBrincat, who wasn't playing the same kind of terrible, god-awful hockey, but just could not score, was, missing opportunities. I think you have to call that out, but also just the unbelievable bad luck. Rittich with the phenomenal stick save in the game prior, and then DeBrincat had 2 posts in the first period.
two crossbars. Because I remember on the one, he hit the crossbar. I think everybody, including myself, tweeted something along the lines of, an Etsy witch cursed him. He needs to speak to a witch doctor. He's got some voodoo curse going. And I hit send on the same generic tweet I sent out. And then a minute later, he hit the crossbar again. It was unbelievable. Like almost one of those like out of body experiences. You're like, there's no way that actually just happened in that timing.
It got to the point where you're laughing at it again. First, it's funny. And then you're like, no, this is stupid. And then it got funny again.
He has 34 shots on net, and his shooting percentage is 2.9.
They put up a stat on the broadcast of league leaders in high danger scoring chances or something like that. And it was like, 5 or 6 players, DeBrincat in the middle of them. It's like, he sure had 3 goals. Then you look at everybody else, 8, 6, 7, 6, 0.
Yeah,
it's like, what the hell, man?
He was the only one in that group to not score. And I don't know if you saw it, Evan, but the gift of prophecy, I don't know that it lives with you anymore.
Oh, God. Well, the universe isn't speaking to me anymore.
It is. You're just too tired to hear it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's very true.
I'm intercepting the signal, and I'm gonna treasure this for as long as I have it. But Alex DeBrincat scores his first of the season at the exact perfect point. If there was ever a time in these first 9 games for DeBrincat to score, this was it. To make it a 4-goal comeback. It was 4-0, became 4-4, dances into the zone, steps across the slot area, and then just fires it past Binnington. And it was a perfect moment for DeBrincat for El Cato.
That's right.
As Evan would call him, to break his goal drought and finally get one through. I always was saying, like, just get him the empty netter at this point, but that was substantially better of a way to do it. Finally. And now you have to hope that the floodgates just open. So DeBrincat makes it 4-4. Simon Edvinsson after that makes it 5-4, and also has the Philip Hronek style cruise missile 200-foot empty netter to seal it. 6-4 Red Wings, 6 unanswered in the most chaotic game I can remember the Red Wings playing in a long time. Stupid, but incredible. And, does game 9 matter any more than the other games early in the season? Most of the time, no, but I actually think in terms of like the vibes and based on what the Red Wings are about to walk into, which is a long road trip up ahead, to come away with 2 regulation points in a win in this one was huge for their fortunes.
Yeah, when you're battling Buffalo for a divisional seed, it's every point matters.
Is it not Montreal, Detroit, and Buffalo right
yes,
now?
Just as we all predicted.
Just like every single one of us predicted.
I think Tampa's bottom of the division.
They were bottom in the East until their win yesterday, I believe.
Well, how the mighty fall. After that game, it was funny because McLellan, as I mentioned, was saying, like, great that we got the win and the boys turned it on, but a lot of what Brad said, a lot of what was written after the game, which was, is it a good sign that you have to keep waking them up? And I'll tell you, based on what they have upcoming, they're going to have their work cut out for them because the road has been rough for Detroit. Those 2 games with Buffalo and New York where they lost, and then even the Leafs game where they won, but that was a game where they were vastly outplayed. Like, the line matching works against them. They're still going to be without Patrick Kane. They still have a very young team asked to shoulder a lot. And coming up, they have St. Louis, LA, and Anaheim back-to-back, and then San Jose, and then Vegas. They don't play at home again until November 7th.
I think if they can go 500, I think that's a big success because we've seen in a short time that when other teams can line match the Red Wings, they have a heck of a tough time putting things together. Yeah,
the Detroit, and part of it is, the lack of depth when there's an injury. So you hope Kane can be back as soon as possible. They're calling it day to day. That's how you have to imagine they're going to treat it. But they even said, like, they already know he's not going to be there for St. Louis. So they hope he can join them for the California leg. But
Patrick Kane strikes me as a LA, California guy. I think, like, all right, I'm feeling good now. I'm not St. Louis, but I can do California.
Yeah, Detroit has to I don't think just dig deep. They have to figure things out fundamentally about the way they have to play based on what Todd McLellan said and based on, what development they still have to do. A lot of what we talked about in the Buffalo game last episode, in the Islanders game, And the first half of the St. Louis game, this episode, still is baked into the volatility that you get when you bring in a young team. Brad and Evan both mentioned, when you bring in these young players, there's going to be turnovers, there's going to be mistakes, and it might seem unfair that you give those guys that grace, but not like the Rasmussens and such. But I mean,
we have expectations for the young guys. Some of these veterans, it's like, all right, you are what you are. You're not going to be part of this long-term solution. Whatever. I can't continue to say the same things I've been saying about some of these guys forever. It's like,
and if you're a veteran, you're supposed to be covering for the mistakes for the.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be making rookie mistakes. But still, yeah, the Red Wings are going to have to figure that out because they have the same group, they have the same cohort, and as of right now, unless it's Raymond getting a bit healthier as he's playing, not much is going to change about this team, and this is going to be the first big, tough test that's going to be like a good indicator of where this team is really at. Other Red Wings notes before we go to break here. Fun fact, every single other team in the Atlantic Division played last night, other than just the Red Wings.
Didn't they all get points or something?
Every single other team in the Atlantic won in regulation, except for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who won in overtime, making it a 3-point game. Their opponent, the Atlantic Division Buffalo Sabres. It was quite legitimately the most perfect, or if you're an Atlantic Division team, imperfect night possible. Detroit gained 0 ground on their divisional foes, period. Well, I mean, a point on Buffalo, but that was as you're not really watching that stuff that intently, under 10 games into the season. But I saw that. I was like, are you kidding? All of you regulation wins as well?
Good news is the Metro Division looks like it sucks. So the Atlantic could have very legitimately 2 wildcard spots.
Could be. Would it be insane? All right. We're going to go to a quick break here to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. And when we're back, we're joined by Prashanth Iyer of Expected by Whom. Back after this. Celebrate a century of Red Wings hockey at Hockeytown Centennial Fan Fest, November 6th to 9th at Motor City Casino Hotel. Experience the ultimate Red Wings celebration, packed with activities for fans of all ages. Meet and mingle with over 50 Red Wings legends and Hall of Famers, including Sergei Fedorov, Scotty Bowman, Nick Lidstrom, Steve Eisman, Chris Chelios, and so many more. Exclusive merchandise, interactive experiences, skills challenges, autograph sessions, and more. You won't want to miss this once-in-a-lifetime event. Tickets are going fast. Get yours now at DetroitRedWings.com/fanfest now. Just because you don't hear him on Expected by Whom lately doesn't mean that Prashanth Iyer isn't dedicated to the Winged Wheel podcast's content universe, because you are currently in a hotel room, my friend, after waiting all day to get that room, and you're here recording this guest spot right now.
If it wasn't you asking me, I probably would have bailed. But you know what? That's the commitment here. The commitment is I'm going to be here for the Winged Wheel podcast content universe.
And because of that, you are now, I didn't even plan this with you, you have now one of these earmarked for you, my friend.
Baby.
The Red Wings JP Wise bottles, the 10-year special edition just for you.
Let's hope that I can open that for a playoff run at some point. I think that would be nice. I don't want to wait too long, but
So you say that we are now 9 games into the Red Wings season, and I mean, you had some pretty interesting, projections for the season that I thought you wrote beforehand, which I thought were notable for a couple reasons. One, they had some positive outcomes for the Wings, and 2, the data that you pulled up showed some potential positive outcomes for the Wings. So talk a little bit about that, and then what you've seen through the first 9 games. Where are you at on everything?
Yeah, so this is a really strange season. I think for starts, when I went through my projections at the beginning of the year, I actually did project the Wings to land 91 points and ultimately secure that 8th spot in the East. So actually making the playoffs for the first time in a decade. But there was a handful of things that I was really curious to pay attention to that I think would dictate whether or not the Wings would actually be able to achieve that or potentially achieve a mark even better than that. And it's been very interesting to watch because over those 9 games, I think those have been very critical things to pay attention to. And really, I think one of the things you have to talk about when evaluating this team through 9 games is the special teams performance. And so coming into this season, over the last 2 years, the Wings have been one of the biggest beneficiaries of the referee whistle, which may not be believable to a lot of Red Wings fans or to Mickey Redmond at times, but they have been the biggest beneficiary of the referee whistle. They were a plus 57 in penalty differential last year, plus 41 the year before. And so with that kind of potent power play that they had, it was kind of going to be one thing to pay attention to is would they be able to continue to draw penalties at this crazy differential? And again, through the early part of the season, even though they've had a couple of games where they've given up a lot of power plays, they are still a +4 in penalty differential. With 33 penalties drawn, 29 taken, and that's the sixth best mark in the league. And when we're thinking about the Red Wings special teams performance and their penalty kill to date, they've gotten outstanding goaltending on the penalty kill. They've been able to play significantly better than last year, which is not really saying a whole lot, given they were approaching futility at times for the worst penalty kill in the history of the league. But that penalty kill looks a lot better. And while the power play doesn't seem as potent, particularly with Patrick Kane out of the lineup, they're still generating a lot of really good chances. And if the floodgates truly have broken open for Alex DeBrincat, this power play may be able to get back on track and be kind of in that 22 to 25% range. And if they're going to draw those penalties the way they're drawing them at that differential, then watch out, because that can really be the biggest, I think, difference, or the thing that makes up a gap in your 5-on-5 play is your ability to have a significant performance on special teams, particularly with how much the power play has become a critical part of the game over the last few seasons. I think that's the biggest thing to watch. And so it's trending the right way for the Wings. It'll just be up to them to continue to execute that way.
So the story of this season has been the rookies, and almost surprisingly so. Like there's a shift from this year they have to make it because they've been so close and fans are tired, to okay, they just graduated 3 guys all at the same time unexpectedly, so we're kind of more just watching their development, and anything else is gravy. What do you make of their performances with Finnie, MBN, and ASP through these first 9 games, and what do you see moving forward? And not just restricted to them, because they also have Danielson and Mazur waiting in the wings.
I think it's absolutely incredible, number one, that they put all 3 of them in the opening lineup. I think I'm on record multiple times saying I was finding some excuse to not have any of them in the lineup, despite how well they had played in the preseason and through camp. But Todd McLellan and Steve Yzerman and the rest of that front office decided that was the right move. And I think through 9 games, Emmett Finnie has just been unbelievable. He is a player that just does everything right. If you sat back and just did an ISO cam on Finnie, he's in the right position. He's making the right reads on the forecheck. He's making, for the most part, the right reads on the transition passes through the neutral zone. And then he's just always in the right spot for puck recoveries in the offensive zone. You go and you look at that goal that he scored against the St. Louis Blues, really to get the Wings kind of back on track after Berggren had scored to give them that first goal. That he finds that soft spot of the ice, and while they ultimately stole Dylan Larkin's assist from him and said that the Blues player is the one who directed it, then he was right in that pocket of kind of free space that is very hard to find. He gets that fluttering shot in, and he gets past Binnington and gets the Wings on their way. And that's just been consistent. He's been one of the biggest revelations. And I think if you go back and look at some of the conversations you and I have had, or things that we've written or talked about over the last 3 or 4 years, one of the biggest things that was going to accelerate the Red Wings rebuild and really get them back into playoff contention was hitting on picks that were outside of the first round. And there's no better case of that than Emmett Finnie. We're talking about a 7th round pick from 2023, a guy that is 20 years old. This is kind of unprecedented for the Red Wings to have someone of that pedigree being 7th round, making the team this quickly. A lot of the comparisons and stats have been drawn back to Henrik Zetterberg. But remember, Henrik Zetterberg had already represented Team Sweden before he even joined the Detroit Red Wings roster in the '02 Olympics. So this is a guy that is doing something different that we haven't seen before, and he's been phenomenal as that puck retriever, do everything on that top line. And so he's by far been the most impressive for me. I think Axel Sandin-Pellikka has shown really good flashes on the defensive side of the things. I really like the way that he moves the puck. His patience with the puck. I think he has a little bit more to go in terms of making the right reads, making them quicker, particularly in the neutral zone, being a little bit more aggressive when challenging shooters and challenging kind of guys rushing. I think from a gap perspective, he may give up a little bit too much space as he's trying to read their speeds a little bit more. And I think we saw a little bit of that in the road trip against Buffalo, where he got kind of beat to the middle of the ice. And those are the things that you want to see get better. But by and large, I think you have to be really impressed with how he's handled himself as a defenseman, which I think is arguably one of the tougher positions at his age and size to step in and play. And then I think Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, at times has looked really good. I think in particular next to Andrew Kopp and JT Compher, that line cycles the puck and I think plays the game the way that he likes to play the game, which is a little bit more rugged, cycling along the boards, wheeling that puck around, not necessarily attacking off the rush as much. But he's also been, I think, a little bit unlucky. There's been a handful of chances he's had. Again, you go back to that St. Louis Blues game, there's a puck that slides right into the slot. He gets a big opportunity to crack really a slap shot right off of that puck. And Parayko's able to get in the way and block that shot and get it out of the rink. And so I think his chances will come. That being said, we saw his minutes cut down to under 7 minutes in the game against the Blues. And so there's a chance that may be a bad omen for him. And he is the only one of the rookies that is slide eligible with his entry-level contract. So that is another factor to consider. But overall, I think you have to be really happy with how each of the rookies has looked. But in particular, it's Emmett Spinney's world.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and it's like you almost didn't have to spend any of your second or third round capital to get that hit outside the first, if that makes sense. Like, you still have all those guys. And I mean, we put out a post today about, Brent Solomon in the USHL and Dmitry Pechelnikov, the second round pick over in Russia still. Like, there's a lot coming on the way. And part of graduating all of these rookies is the volatility that comes in your play. Like, certainly the loss to the Islanders wasn't all on the young guys, but a lot of it had to do with mistakes from either rookies or younger players, veterans too, unfortunately. And that volatility you have to expect will be there for a little while. Do you see it as kind of a risk factor for this team to have short-term success in this season and a hopeful playoff push this year? Or would you continue on this path and graduate even more rookies as the year goes on if you're Yzerman and McLellan?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And when we're thinking about rookies in particular, I think obviously we talk about the rookie wall a lot. So a lot of the junior seasons tend to be shorter than the NHL season, even when you factor in playoff games. So how well do they hold up throughout the course of the season? There's obviously the adjustment period that we're talking about in their first, 10 games now, picking up the speed, how quick they need to make decisions, what are the reads, the physicality of the game. And I think it'll lead to some inconsistency that you'll see from them throughout the season. I think that's something that the front office clearly has said that they're willing to live with. And I think you should live with that, even if it comes at the expense of losing some games you would ideally like to win. For example, that Buffalo game is not a game you want to lose to a divisional opponent, a team that you're expecting to be better than and had been better than to date. You don't want to necessarily be giving up ground to a team like that. And that can be a sign of some of those inconsistencies from not just rookie play, but also from some of the veterans here. But when you have a makeup of a team like that and you're leaning on some of these young guys as much as they are, Axel Sandin-Pellikka getting 20 minutes a night, Finnie playing on your top line, playing penalty kill minutes, it's going to come with some risk. I think if you're the Red Wings, you have to put the best players in position now. And one thing that I think we've talked about over the years is at some point you have to start understanding what you have in these prospects before the time comes to either have to re-up contracts, re-up some of these RFA deals. It's important to understand, because I don't like to equate it to this, because I don't like using the term asset when you're talking about a human being. But essentially, if you think about the depreciating value of a car when you drive it off of a lot, you have just bought a new car, And at that moment, that car is the most valuable it's going to be. And then it continues to decline unless you see some elements of, performance that dictate things going another way. But by and large, that asset is kind of most valuable at the time you've acquired it. And so when you're thinking about players that haven't necessarily appeared in the NHL or haven't made the NHL consistently, there's always some thought on, how good they might be or how good they could be. But if you're thinking about the player and they haven't been in the league and now they're getting to D+3, D+4, D+5 in terms of years out from their draft, the likelihood that they're actually going to make it and be something drops every single year. And so the sooner I think you have a better understanding of what these guys can offer, the better. And so if I'm in charge this year, I think the window is certainly open to get looks at Danielson and Mazur. We haven't seen the veterans necessarily stake strong claims to those spots, particularly seeing the scratch of Michael Rasmussen this past game. Jonathan Berggren, Elmer Soderblom, they've all been scratched on occasion. You have opportunities to take a look at these guys. I think you absolutely should.
So Simon Edvinsson just came off a pretty shocking couple of games, bounced back nicely with 2 goals against St. Louis, game winner, and then the empty netter to seal it. And part of the St. Louis game saw him move and play a regular shift with Mo Seider. And the defense has been, like, at first you're like, oh my God, this is actually kind of working. But, as they went on that little mini road trip, you saw a lot of holes and a lot of kind of devastating mistakes coming through. Do you see the Seider-Edvinsson pairing working long-term, not just with those two, but also what the Red Wings would have to configure around them?
Yeah. It was nice to see when they were rolling 7 defensemen against St. Louis that you got to see a lot of different pairs. And obviously last season we got a glimpse at the Seider-Edvinsson pair for a few games, and that looked, pretty good when it was together. From my perspective, I don't know that I would necessarily stick with that pairing long term. I think one of the advantages of having Seider and Edvinsson when they're both playing at the top of their game is you essentially have one of those guys on the ice for 40 to 45 minutes of the game. And that was a hallmark really of older Red Wings teams when you had Nick Lidstrom being able to be on the ice for 30 minutes. And you also had, whether it was Konstantinov that could be on the ice, or you had Chris Chelios that could be on the ice, or you had Nicholas Kronwall towards the end of his career. You always had 2 guys that could essentially chew up 80% of the game for you. And I like that concept of being able to do that with both Seider and Edvinsson. I think if you deploy them together, that's certainly a dominant pair. But what's asked of that pair then is a lot more challenging minutes that don't necessarily maximize their abilities, really puts them into tougher defensive spots. And I don't necessarily think that's Edvinsson's strength. When he's talking about having some of the worst games of his career, I think really a lot of the challenges were his in defensive zone decision making. I think when we look at some of those things, he's trying to challenge too high in the zone. He's trying to force a turnover. He's trying to make a play. It felt a little bit like hero puck, where you're watching him maybe take an unnecessary risk to try and force a turnover to turn the tide, and that's not the game that you want him playing. And so, from my perspective, as he writes his game, I think you're better off having him and Seider on separate pairings. Sharop has been absolutely fine this year. He's generally been a whipping boy for the team over the course of his contract, but he's largely been fine. He's blocking shots well. He's moving the puck well. He's making good reads. I think let him and Mo continue to be that top pair, and whether it's Axel Sandin-Pellikka with Edvinsson, or you try some other combinations next to Edvinsson, I think that's a critical thing, is having those two separate.
Another part of the Red Wings season so far is, only 3 road games so far. They won one of them in Toronto, which was an absolute steal of a win. And then obviously the 2 tough games against Buffalo and the Islanders. And part of that was the Red Wings, aside from just not having the intensity and the energy, it looked like the line matching was working against them. And, not having Kane for at least the first good portion of this road trip, do you see this as something that could potentially be a long-term concern for the Red Wings in terms of how the road splits work against them? Or is this something that will they'll grow out of potentially as the younger players get more accustomed to the game?
Yeah, I don't know that I would read too much into the road splits in terms of the line matching. I mean, we're talking about a relatively small sample at this point, just 3 games. And one of the things that stood out to me was the Wings really just struggled to stack shifts. And what I mean by that is when you're forechecking the way the Wings forecheck, you want to be able to apply that forecheck pressure at the beginning of your shift when you're fresh, when you have kind of the best ability to recover, the best ability to take away lanes, the best ability to make those gap reads, the best ability to close as defensemen. And what was happening is the Wings were struggling to do that at the beginning of the shift because they were spending so much time defending. So when you're defending as much as they were defending and having to chase and chase and chase, what ends up happening instead of a dump and chase forecheck, it's really a dump and change forecheck. And then the Wings end up on their heels. They're having to spend the first part of every shift trying to recover that puck. And I think that's really what happened is they came out flat in really all of those road games. And I don't think it had a ton to do with line matching. And I think really it was just a flat approach on the road for those games. And one of them being off of a back-to-back, the game against the Islanders. So I don't know that I'm too concerned at this point in time. I think we'll have to see and get a little bit more data on what about the road really is causing them issues. I do think the line matching to some extent is helpful for Todd when he's at home, particularly in freeing up the Larkin line to match really against whoever he wants to. So in the game against Edmonton, getting them a lot against McDavid and Larkin actually being able to win those shifts, I think was critical to winning that game. But this team is still capable of winning on the road without line matching. They just can't come out flat the way that they did. And that's been a problem. And they've done that 3 times on the road, and they got lucky to win one of them. And they got their butts kicked the other 2 times. So we'll see now going on the road on this West Coast swing if they can continue to play the way that we know they can play, which is aggressive forecheck, aggressive pinching, stacking those shifts, winning multiple shifts in a row, sustaining offensive zone pressure, generating those chances, drawing the penalties, and then putting their power play in a position to help them take the lead. I think that's what we got to watch for now.
You mentioned Larkin's line, and Dylan Larkin's start to the season obviously can't be overlooked. As you said, should have been a 9-game point streak, but 8 officially and a hot start for the captain. And someone who has had questions around him, I kind of feel like every year we come into the season because he's always good, but there's always something. And last season it was, playing hurt after 4 Nations, and he really fell off for pretty much the rest of the season virtually. And that was a big part of why the Red Wings, kind of collapsed. Does Larkin's start this season inspire you to think any differently about how his year can go, or is it still too early to tell?
For me, the realist is it's too early to tell. I mean, Larkin has had hot starts to seasons in the past. He typically does start quite well. When you look back over the course of his career, he's not really a slow starter to a season. And then typically we've seen his kind of game either slow due to injury or due to kind of other challenges over the past few seasons. And so I think it's a little early for me to say that Larkin's start is something that should be really read into a ton. I do think this is the best and most complete he's looked on both the offensive and defensive side of the puck. And really what's being asked of him right now is so much. He is being asked to essentially win every faceoff for this team. In every situation where a faceoff is needed, he's the guy that is out there. And you're seeing it on the penalty kill where they're asking him to win a faceoff and then change immediately. You're seeing it on the power play. You're seeing it at even strength. You're seeing him matching against McDavid's line. You're seeing him out there to try and generate those goals and chances when the team is really struggling. He's being asked to do everything, and I think really more than he's ever been asked to do before, particularly with a younger roster. And right now, without Patrick Kane in the lineup, he is the unquestioned leader. And that is something that I do think we have to admire, like take a step back and admire the way he's embraced that, handled that, and then performed. The biggest question this year will be, can he sustain that throughout the year? Can he stay free of injury? We're already talking about him being a little banged up with having maintenance days, in between these games recently. And Todd even alluded to it a little bit after one of the earlier games that, Larkin was a little banged up, but that was nothing to be concerned with. And then with the Olympics this year, we know Larkin's likely to be selected for Team USA. Will he be able to sustain his performance through that after the Olympics and be able to lead this team on a critical playoff push in March, where this team is deathly afraid of playing a hockey game?
So what else, or what's the one other major thing that you're looking at, if anything, in terms of, what to pay attention to for the Red Wings to see how you might think their season might go?
Yeah, I don't want to be too much of a pessimist in this. And so one of the things I'll point out is we've seen them play 9 games now. They've only gotten their butt kicked at 5-on-5 in one of those games. And that was the St. Louis game. The Islanders game looked like that on the score sheet, and that's really just because of a complete defensive collapse. But the Wings still had a handful of really good chances. The St. Louis game was really the only game where through 30 minutes, they had absolutely nothing outside of a couple of DeBrincat posts. And St. Louis was getting everything that they wanted. And that's the only game that on the final score sheet, the Wings got their butts kicked at 5-on-5. And that's important because that's what represents almost 75% to 80% of a hockey game is 5-on-5 play. And historically, over the last couple of years, the Wings have not been that good of a 5-on-5 team. They've relied heavily on either really timely scoring, otherworldly goaltending, or their power play to be that great equalizer for them. But right now, when they don't have their power play being that great equalizer, it's still good. It's just not clicking at the same effectiveness as it has been. They're finding other ways to get it done. They're finding ways to be better at 5-on-5, even though that St. Louis game did not look it. They're still generating quality chances. They're doing much better job of generating that in the offensive zone compared to previous years. What they really just got to clean up is the consistency. And I think that's a double-edged sword when you're thinking about both the optimism and maybe pessimism for how the season goes, is if this team can consistently bring that forecheck and stack shifts and win shift after shift, this is going to be a fun hockey team to watch. And they're going to be a team that you don't want to play in the playoffs, because when they get in on you with that forecheck, and we talk about it with Carolina and Florida when we watch them in the playoffs, they're just not a fun team to play against. And I think that can be the case with Detroit when that forecheck is clicking, but it's going to be, can they consistently bring it? Can they consistently make those right reads? How does the team evolve and mature over the course of the season? How do those younger players continue to make and learn from those mistakes and ultimately make better decisions consistently? If that leads to a more consistent performance from the Red Wings, and I think there's every reason to be optimistic about this team, because some of the numbers, particularly at 5-on-5, are more encouraging than what we saw in previous years, to where even if the power play is not there, even if the goaltending is not there, I mean, we still have to point out this team is the second worst 5-on-5 save percentage in the league. And despite that, they're still 6-3. So you're still winning games where you're not getting the goaltending, and that's not something we could have said in past seasons. So I think this is a lot of signs that are encouraging, but it does require some things to get better, some of which we expect, like the power play when Patrick Kane comes back. Others will be that consistency piece, and that's what I'm watching for.
You heard it from the man himself, our resident data analytics expert, host of Expected by Whom. And something else Prashanth is a big part of is our initiative, Wings Money on the Board, in support of the Jamie Daniels Foundation. If you contributed last year, you'll have received a message from us recently, just as we're doing another round of giveaways and prizes to try to get a last-minute collection of those pledges. And then this upcoming season's launch will be at Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA Saturday, November 15th. So more there. Thank you all so very much for your support. Prashanth, thank you for jumping on the show, and more from you soon.
Looking forward to it. See you guys at Winged Wheel Podcast Night.
Welcome back. That was our conversation with Prashanth Iyer. Always good to get him back on the show. Hope to hear more from him and Sean on Expected by Whom soon here. All right, more notes from the Red Wings world. Nate Danielson returns to play, was activated, sent down to Grand Rapids, and Steve Yzerman was in person to watch him make his season debut. 2 primary assists, a 4-0 win. Sebastian Cossa, a 30-save shutout, and the Griffins go to 5-0 to start the season. I believe is the best in franchise history, and good showing for Danielson for not having played for that long.
seems like he hasn't missed a beat. If things continue the way they are, I imagine it's only a matter of time before the Red Wings come calling.
Just not everything will be fixed, but if Nate Danielson can come in and be a sufficient center in your depth, then that just opens up so much more for you.
You get Kane back, the top 6 normalizes, and then you can call it JVR, Danielson, Appleton. Changes the outlook in a very positive way.
Appleton on the first line right now. I should mention, we should also note in the St. Louis game, I forgot to mention this, Seider and Edvinsson, partway through that game, started getting a regular shift together as the lines jumbled there. And if they can make that work and have that stick, that would be absolutely thrilling to see those two end up together and see how things shake out. Sherratt, again, playing banged up, so we'll see how long things persist, but I think that would be extremely cool. I mean, good for Edvinsson as well. Obviously, his game turned around against St. Louis compared to prior. So we'll see if those two stick together. All right, other notes from the Red Wings world. If you follow us on any socials, Twitter, Instagram, anything else, check out the Red Wings prospect update we just posted, and gives you a good overview of some updates from Red Wings prospects throughout the entire pipeline across the world. And there's the Carter Mazers and the Sebastian Kosas and the Jesse Kiskanens, which everyone knows about. And then there's also other guys like Max Plant, who we've been talking about, Dmitry Bichelnikov, who everyone's always keeping a close eye on. And then you look at Brent Solomon in the USHL, 4th round pick from last season, and he is tearing it up. It's the USHL. I know it's not the A or anything like that, but he leads the league in points. I believe he's 2nd in goal scoring through 11 games played, 15 points. Brent Solomon could be one to watch out with Sioux Falls.
If Emmett Finney has taught us anything, you just never know.
Man, yeah, that is a national story now, Emmett Finney. Like, it is everywhere. Biz can't stop talking about him. Dangle tweeted about him recently. Like, there's national coverage, there's major coverage from other markets. People are noticing Emmett Finney, and I mean, he's in the mix. He's only behind Demidov in points right now, and he's earning it. Like, there's very few consistent Red Wings bright spots over these past few games, barring the comeback with St. Louis, but he is one of them. Like, he had, 4 straight games with a point, something like that. Like, he has been, I wonder how long he's going to go into this Calder race, if you want to call it that, this early into the season.
Like, he's winning it, so I would assume all the way.
And you're not wrong. Like, the 7th round storyline that's going to be worth something with voters.
It would be a great debate if it keeps up the way it is, where you're debating 1st overall Schaefer, 7th round Finney. Like, that would be fascinating.
Incredible scenes. All right, let's get into some NHL news here. The Nordiques jerseys versus the Whalers jerseys. Was everything legitimately that much better back then?
Yes, it was.
This is the moment, or the call for more color in team uniforms, and this is what sort of the third jersey, the retro jersey nights are for. It's to do something different. It's get some more color on the screen. I feel horrible for both of the former franchises who had to watch that, but yeah, it was unbelievable.
That was where gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Those Nordiques jerseys especially, I'm like, my God, are those incredible on screen. And then the Whalers logo is, I think, one of the best of all time. And I just thought of, okay, yeah, Hartford fans are probably really sad, but I don't know about that as a market necessarily. But Quebec City fans, man, that's got to be torture. Like, to see the team that took your team away trotting out, it feels like grave dancing, and trotting out your jersey, which everyone loves and they're fawning over, and you would accept an NHL team and be ready for one right now, but you will never get one back because it's not creating new fans, and you're not in a major metro area in North America, so the NHL is just not going to go there, and you just have to sit and watch it. Like, that's got to be absolute torture. I don't know if I could bear it if I was.
If they weren't
City.
French, I would feel so much worse.
I thought you would subscribe to a intra-Quebec rivalry.
Oh man, sign me up.
Yeah. I have no connections to Quebec City. Awesome city to visit, but no connections otherwise. So I enjoyed the matchup, but I was like, oh God, that's got to be a gut punch for them.
It's been 30 years. They're fine.
Yeah, they get over things very quickly.
Yes.
Famously.
Famous for not holding a grudge.
Yeah. I would never let it go. If my team ever lost its franchise.
And every year, people in Quebec are like, we have an NHL ready stadium. You'll have a 10-year wait list for season tickets. We are ready. And they're like, you know what? How about Arizona for the 7th time? How about Arizona again? Like, yeah, I feel for them. I truly do.
Well, but if we get Atlanta back and we get those baby blue Atlanta jerseys, sorry, Quebec, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
The one shoulder. Oh yeah. Let's bring it all back. Everything was better back then. Did you see the Kempe celebration in Dallas, the horns down?
No.
So Kempe wins it in overtime and hits the Dallas fans with the horns down, which honestly was really funny. I was like, I love any kind of personality from players that way. Someone pointed out, they're like, yeah, okay, so the Longhorns are in Austin. That was Dallas. Not quite the mark that you were looking to hit. And it's, I have to say, from someone far detached from that conference and those teams in that rivalry, I thought it was funny.
Just be like Andrew Ferentsen, just flip them off. Just keep it old-fashioned.
No, his glove got stuck.
Yeah, a malfunction, of course.
Wardrobe malfunction. You know,
who hasn't?
Ferentz, Janet, happens to the best of us. Do you guys make anything of Stamkos and Kadri? Those names being out there in terms of guys who could be available based on how their seasons and their times with their respective teams could be going? Because if Calgary completely implodes, Kadri would be a guy who'd get a lot of attention. And Stamkos and Nashville haven't exactly worked out as a fit so far.
Nope. Love both players. Wouldn't touch either of them.
Yeah.
That's one of those ones. Good players. You'd think that maybe if everything goes right, it'd be great ads, but you look at the ages, you look at the contracts, you look at where the Red Wings are at right now, that's, even when I squint, that's a tough one to see.
Raising it because I think those names are going to come up a lot. So I think in general, you're like, does that answer the questions that the Red Wings have? Not necessarily based on, where they're at and what you would need to give up and what those teams would be looking for, but just starting to raise the questions now because I think those are going to be popular around the league. Okay, we're going to go to one more quick break, and when we're back, the final segment on this episode of the Windy Wheel Podcast. Back after this. You're invited to a night at the Fox Theater celebrating 100 years of Hockeytown on November 8th. Hosted by Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond, hear stories from legends like Yzerman, Fedorov, Lidstrom, Zetterberg, and Bowman, plus alumni meet and greets. Enjoy music, video, and live storytelling for one spectacular night. Get your tickets at DetroitRedWings.com/Fox event.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We let loose, we have fun. We get thoughts with Evan, which I think are getting more coherent than they ever have. Just life is coming at you fast and hard. It's a good time. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, which is a fantastic community, and you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. You can also enter to be eligible for a giveaway for 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game in season. So we have those and we give them directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. Some questions from our patrons. Dallas Drake says, what is your take on Lucas Raymond playing through an obvious injury? Wouldn't he heal up faster by not playing? He isn't very effective. Might the Red Wings be a better team with him resting right now?
Long term, maybe, but in the short term, absolutely not.
It's one of those things where it's like, the Red Wings just don't have a lot to work with, right? Like, has MBN been fantastic or even good? I mean, I wager a lot of the times over the last 3 games, I've seen a player who could use time in the AHL with MBN. but their other options aren't strong. And so you kind of have to go through it. Like you have MBN playing 7 minutes last night or something like that. Like not the end of the world. Other guys got, low minutes too. JVR finds himself riding the pine a lot of times, depending on the moments. They scratched Rasmussen, Soderblom last game. Like I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but the team just doesn't have a lot, which is why I think they're not being more conservative with that one. And it also depends on the injury, right? Like there's certain injuries where doctor will be like, look, you can play, you won't worsen it, it's just going to hurt. If you can play through that, then great. There's certain injuries where they're like, yeah, you absolutely have to rest this. So I don't know that the Red Wings are putting Raymond out there if they are worried about long-term damage, really. Chunkus Dunkus says, is Todd the one to break this team's roller coaster tendencies, or is it going to be a season where I should look into some blood pressure medications?
Why can't it be both?
I think you'd be definitely the latter for sure. I think he'll break some of their tendencies as we've seen so far, but it's a young team, man.
If it keeps going like this, he might actually break some of their bones.
That might have been the threat in that timeout. That honestly might have been it.
He's got work ahead of him.
He has a lot of work ahead of him. Hopefully fewer massively impactful timeouts are needed, but
just every other game. Or maybe every 2 games.
I would take that. Yeah, 2 games on, 3 games off kind of thing. I'll
It's not like you can bank the timeouts. Use them. Yell at somebody.
I mean, we all remember what the other side of that looks like. Jack's dads and your second favorite patron have similar questions. I'll read them here. Compare and contrast Finnie and MBN. Seems Finnie has exceeded expectations, while MBN isn't much of a needle mover yet. Might be a bit of an unfair comparison given where they're playing and where Finnie was drafted. And while doubtful, do you think Yzerman would consider moving MBN to Grand Rapids to give Mazur and Danielson when ready a look and avoid MBN's ELC to kick in? Your second favorite patron says, do we think and or should MBN go down to Grand Rapids for a bit? Time on ice for the game against St. Louis was the lowest of all players. At a mere, 6 minutes, 37 seconds. Why not give Mazur or Danielson the opportunity instead?
I think it's probably building up to that. I think that's the most likely scenario is he'll get some time in Grand Rapids to get things right. And really the difference between the two of them right now is just pace.
Yeah.
MBN just looks slow at this level. And it's not that he's doing the wrong things or any of that stuff. It's just he can't skate fast enough or do it quick enough to be effective. Whereas Finnie, that's his strength.
He's a burner.
Yeah, the Red Wings have slow, ineffective players in spades, so they may as well. He could spend some time in Grand Rapids and build up the foot speed and the confidence. Like you can see why he was a first-round pick. It's just some of the little things right now just aren't quite there.
Yeah, I will say I don't think it's just that Finnie is skating faster. I do think he is playing better. They also have very different games too in what they're asked to do as well.
Well, there's a difference between skating fast and playing fast. Finnie's doing both.
Finnie is absolutely doing both, and that's what I mean. Like the decision making, the execution, those are all happening better and at speed. You have to call out better line mates than what MBN has had. But yeah, I don't think your assessment is wrong. Like everyone's kind of noticing the game is going around MBN in terms of pace right now. You see moments for sure, and I still wonder, do you bring up Mazur and or Danielson and it's not MBN that goes down? But if he goes down, it's not the end of the world whatsoever. AJ Voss says, recently snapped cold streak aside, do you think it will be a big priority to re-sign DeBrincat this summer when he's eligible to extend his contract on July 1st? Or is that going to be more of a 26-27 season or a June 2027 kind of thing? What do you think his next contract will look like?
Yzerman does not and has not been the guy to extend a year out. He seems to like to go down to the wire.
Well, I don't know. He might want to extend, but it's players and agents who are taking it further, right? Like,
we don't know that. Again, it's likely. But how many contracts have we seen over the last few years where teams sign their guys a year out? Went down to the wire with Raymond, went down to the wire with Larkin, went down to the wire with Seider. Edvinsson doesn't have his extension yet. Kasper doesn't have his extension yet. Like he doesn't have, I can't think off the top of my head, a guy where he signed him a year out. That's a pattern at that point. So
DeBrincat would be a guy who I think if someone was going to buck the trend, and this is with the assumption that the players are the ones who want to push this further. DeBrincat knows he wants to stay in Detroit. Like, that is a foregone conclusion. Like, it's important. This is family.
He forced his way there.
Yeah. So I could see him saying, yeah, let's get this done. I know goal scorers get big numbers in this league, and I know the cap is going up by a lot, but I don't think DeBrincat's going to be Kaprizoving. Not that he would make that much money, but you know what I mean? Trying to squeeze the team for every dollar that he can get. I just don't get that impression.
Neither do I, but I think he'll sign sometime between New Year's and the trade deadline if that's going to happen of that fourth season on the contract.
That's fair enough. Yeah. We'll see how it plays out. Spirit of Red Wings Future says, hey guys, is it just me or does it seem like there's something up with Sam and Edvinsson? Just seems like he hasn't been his stellar self the last 2 games and has been burnt a few times now. Hope he snaps out of it soon.
This is his second NHL season. There are going to be slumps. Kasper's looked really off too lately. Like it's going to happen. It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I think, and do you mean a different pairing as well and what he's tasked with doing at moments look good, but at other times it's like, is that too much of a lift for him to offset a rookie NHLD partner?
Just some bad decision making, looking frazzled at times too, taking bad penalties. It's all part of the learning curve, but you'd think for a guy who just is so smooth and so confident that some of these things would not be so in your face.
Yeah, like, yes, but I do kind of tend towards what Brad said, where it's like he's gonna go through that no matter what. And
I agree.
yeah,
But some of them are just head-scratchingly not good.
Some of the penalties you're just like, Simon
Gets walked by a fourth liner. It's like, man, you are one of the most confident guys on the ice. Like, shouldn't happen. I know it did. It does. Everybody gets walked at some point or multiple times. Yeah, it's just the past 2 games have been rough.
Yeah. He, if anyone, needed a 2-goal comeback performance.
Yes.
Noted minute muncher Joey Jojo Shabadoo says Berggren had a nice game against St. Louis, and with Kane's absence, I've noticed Todd has elevated his role a bit. What would Berggren's next 10 games need to look like for you to change your perspective on trading him? Honestly, more of what we've seen the last couple of games of just showing up and, cleaning up plays and opportunities that come in depth minutes, being the guy to clean up on the second power play unit, converting a little bit. Like, that's what Berggren brings to the ice. Like, there have been and there will continue to be frustrations in terms of like responsibility up and down the ice and, missing coverage, whatever. But what does Berggren bring is offense. And so if he can bring that offense in his depth role, he's not necessarily given the most to work with in terms of the centerman down there. But at the same time, like, he considers a game and it's not going to be on the Larkin line. But if you can just stick with some reasonable amount of offense, there's not a lot of competition for the last couple forward spots right now for the Red Wings. If he's better than Rasmussen and Soderblom, that's pretty much all you need at this moment. And we've seen it from Berggren. He can be that kind of cleanup crew in front of the net. Finnie's hot and I'm ready says, first-time patron here, long-time listener. Thank you so much for the support. Welcome to the Dub Dub Club. Hell of a name. Says, when should we start being worried about our road home splits? Even though we won in Toronto, all of our road games have looked pretty bad so far this year. Also, Evan, congratulations on the baby and condolences on the sleep. Just know it could be worse. We had twins 3 years ago, and they knew how to dump and change all night much better than a lot of the Wings bottom 6. Anyways, you'll get through it. Cheers, boys.
One of my good friends had twins. Their first birthday party was the day before Catherine went into labor, actually. So I messaged him maybe last week when I was like at my lowest of lows. And I'm like, I have no idea how you two did it. I was like, I don't know.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he died. He survived.
He replied to me. So I'm supposed to see him Tuesday, but I presume he's alive.
That's never really confirmation that you're alive or dead, is if you reply.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, the road home splits are real. We talked about it. Like, it's going to be, especially with Kane out, this road trip is going to be a big indicator. I am admittedly already concerned. I haven't seen a lot to inspire confidence so far.
Yeah.
So you have to just hope that it's early season growing pains with the young roster. But other than that, we'll see when we get back to Detroit on November 7th and what record the Red Wings are coming back home with to the LCA. All right. On that note, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Wind Wheel Podcast. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. Thank you to Prashanth Iyer for jumping on this episode, and thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for making the entire Winged Wheel podcast happen. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to support the show. And if you want to help us out, but you're not really into doing the whole Patreon thing, that is totally okay. Wherever you get this podcast, if you want to just subscribe, be it Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever, leave a rating, a review, a thumbs up, a stars, a like button, whatever it is, tell a friend about the show. All of that really does help us out. Winged Wheel Podcast and at the LCA, we hope to see you all there. Get your tickets before they're gone, wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings. And to our name level supporters on Patreon, we cannot do this without you. Arjun Shanker, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Martin Norberg, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Rain Dano, Below Average Ball Hockey Goalie, Matthew M. Rice, Darb EQ, Sea Lion, Bingo Bango, Hassam Al-Qassam, Asher Killian, Kaylin Wood, Alex Toger, That's What I Appreciate About You, Derek Enstam, Matt McKay, Andy Hardcore, Sam Bankson, Citizen High Five, R.A., Aaron Hudson, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, The El Cato, Stephen Ortlieb, Jonathan Miller, Give Blood Fight Probert, DJ Denton, Carl Brutina Nanaluski, Jay Gollum, John Engels, CB55, Connor Scovey, Adam Zuiza, Adam Rose, I Miss Pew Suter, Steve R, Hockeytown Matt, Mr. Kuzi, Chaotic, Monkey, Craig Kibble, Iserplan Stan, Clip Clop, Nay, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Podgy713, Griffin Not from Grand Rapids, Marty, Cozy, the OG13, Jeff Pridemore, Eric Hill, Butts Carlton, Best James Bond, Beer League Legend, Alec, Mark Hernandez, Slim Smitty Cards, Grand Rapids Gurley, Anna Sleeman, William, Kip Tira Jr., Mike Asher, Chris Black, August, Brian Munn, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Quaz, Lonnie Zone, Dylan Larkin Trade Sacrifice, Evan gave me a concussion after he headbutted me, Matt Keeler, Linda Hull, last name Trickle, first name Richard, Connor Leighton, As Good as It Gets. What's that?
Great driver.
As Good as It Gets, Jeremiah Adobo, Josh Yelton, Brad Simmons, Darren Fick, Bex, The Hodag, Baseball, Basketball, Wiener Dog, Short Sports, Commander Ben Baron, the Cheeseback Space Force, Sandin-Pellikka's Pet Pelican, Griffey Boy, JM Rhapsody, Frank Stanley, Rosie Posey, Ophelia, That Other Guy, Pucking Puck, Carl Thames, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Stephen, A.A. Ron, Corey Prida, All Motor No Hands, Gene Sullivan, Roy Mudbutt, Big Cheese, James Pridemore, Upernadian, Drop the Puck, Eric Nance, Ann Stanislavski, Jim, Bellingham Massiballs, Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott, Johnny Page, Lucas Raymond, Cops, Bubba Gump Lip, Grepsky, Evan Beckner, The Return of Jambo, C.E. Hayes, Finney to the Rafters, Jacob Marsh, Falkness, 91 in the Rafters, and I'm still stranded in Arkansas, Fighting Ed at the Joe, Andrew Shaw, Axel's Sandy Pelican, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.
This message is brought to you by Greenlight Lending. Are you facing financial red lights on your home ownership journey? Don't have money for a down payment or closing costs? Struggling with your current mortgage payment or other debt obligations? Or maybe you have a complicated situation like credit challenges or self-employment income. At Greenlight Lending, they turn those red lights green with creative mortgage solutions for purchase and refinance loans. Their team crafts personalized plans with flexible closing cost options, competitive brokered rates, and innovative loan programs tailored to your needs. Whether it's finding the right loan or guiding you through the process, they're here to help you score your home ownership goals. Let's get you out of the penalty box and into the game. Head to gogreenlightlending.com to explore solutions or call Nick directly at 586-321-1888 for your customized plan. All loans are subject to credit approval, terms, and conditions. Rates and programs vary. Contact for details. Greenlight Lending, lighting the way to your financial future. NMLS 2676683, an equal housing opportunity lender, proud sponsor of the Winged Wheel Podcast.